Episode 2 was duly recorded the following Saturday, and then on Tuesday the 5th and Wednesday the 6th of March, filming resumed at Ealing Studios, using the large refinery control room set, which would see the final onslaught of foam and seaweed in the last episode. A scene that would have to be accomplished in one take due to its complexity.
And the denouement of the whole thing, as I remember it, was that we had perspex type cylinders coming up in, where the scientists, the white-coated boffins, could see the gas and monitor everything, and that seaweed figures were going to come in there and sort of bang. Eventually they'd break through and the foam would come. So what we did was to get a number of foam machines and set them up, and this marvellous set with different levels. I think I got 4 film cameras, and we couldn't rehearse it, you see. We only did it once. So I said to all the extras who were sitting around, right, all that's going to happen now is that we're going to fill this place with foam. Now, don't worry about the foam, you can breathe it. But what you have to do is to get out of this building. And the way out is not to where the cameras are, because there's meant to be a wall where we are. So just have a look around now and see where the exits are. Except that don't go for the nearest exit, otherwise you'll all disappear too quickly. So you make your way to that exit, and you make your way to that exit, and then you'll all cross in the middle, and there'll be confusion. Leave it as long as you think you dare before you start running. I didn't know what was going to happen. So they started these things up. Technically, the foam had to fill all the back area, under the rostra and so on. And they went on for some time. I thought, I don't know, it was probably about 30 seconds and nothing happened. And guys was looking around, I said, keep acting, don't look at me, just keep acting, it's going to happen in a moment. For God's sake, we've only got this one go. So we all kept there like this, and suddenly some foam pushed a door open. They did what I asked them to do. They didn't get up too quickly, or they got up and they didn't run out. And then suddenly the place seemingly convulsed. And they got up, and a lot of them were on a high platform. And they left it so when they went down, they couldn't see. They couldn't actually see where they were. And a lot of them panicked. And what ensued was fantastic from my point of view, because they went down, and then they couldn't see, so they had to go up again to get their bearings to see where any door was, where it was the one I told them to go out of, or another one. So, how do you get out here? It's coming from here, how the hell do we get out? Come on! Somebody said, this way. And it was fantastic stuff, real panicking people. So that was one great take, and there was about 6 inches of water in the studio after that.
Recording of episodes 3 to 5 continued over the next 3 Saturdays, all in Limegrove Studio D, with episode 4 being committed to tape less than 3 hours after episode 1 of the story had been broadcast on BBC One. On Friday the 23rd of March, the recording date for episode 5, assistant floor manager Margot Hayhoe found herself having to make an unusual and unplanned contribution to the story.
One of the ways of killing off the seaweed monsters was the fact that they didn't like loud noise, and part of the plot at the end was that Victoria would give a piercing scream which made the seaweed monsters disappear. Unfortunately, on the day we were recording this, Deborah Watling had a rather bad cold and decided that she couldn't scream, and Michael Brandt made the decision that I should do the scream. Luckily, he didn't give me much notice. He just suddenly turned around and said, Margot, would you like to scream for us in front of the whole studio? I was slightly put off by this, but, the show has to go on sort of thing, so I let out my piercing scream. So I think that's probably a little-known fact. It was actually me who did the scream, and it was pre-recorded, and Victoria, Deborah Watling, had to mime to it. So it's a little claim to fame on my part, I suppose, on Doctor Who, probably the only one.
For the last episode, noted as the final one on the camera script, recording shifted to Friday, and was transferred from the confines of Lime Grove D to the largest studio the BBC owned, Studio 1 at Television Centre. All 6 episodes of Fury from the Deep were produced at a cost of £17,576, just under £1,000 more than the estimated budget. Although in hindsight Fury from the Deep is regarded as one of the better Patrick Troughton stories, it was not particularly well received at the time of its transmission. Viewing figures, which had started at 8.2 million for the first episode, gradually dropped down to 5.9 for episode 5, before gaining an extra million for episode 6. Press reaction to the new story was not initially favourable. Following the first episode's transmission, Francis Hope wrote in New Statesman magazine,
"The strains of constant production are beginning to tell. Last week some rather fierce seaweed gushed out of a ventilator and advanced on the captive Victoria Waterfield. It was only 3 weeks ago that a similar ventilator admitted billowing clouds of the sinister fungus choking London's underground. Fungus to seaweed is not the widest gamut in the world, and everyone might benefit from a pattern of 6 weeks on and 6 weeks off, rather than the present continuous stream of 6-episode adventures. That seaweed troubles me, just as it troubles the crew pumping Eurogas out of the North Sea in the year circa 2000. We've already seen some angry clashes of masterful executives which are straight out of the Troubleshooters. It's one thing to avoid ludicrous monsters, and another to fall into the old television idiom of romanticised documentary. As Jamie remarked, in so many words, the TARDIS has a statistically improbable tendency to fetch up on Earth. Was this a hint from one scriptwriter to another?
3 months later, during the repeat transmission of The Evil of the Daleks, Anne Purser, writing in the Stage and Television Today, commented,
"The impact that Doctor Who used to have, and only occasionally has had with recent stories, was in the originality of the current monster. Either some new stories must be found, and better than the crazy foam threat, or the BBC should allow Doctor Who to retire gracefully."
In the mid-70s, record producer Don Norman, fondly remembering Fury from the Deep, approached Victor Pemberton with the idea of producing a Doctor Who story LP. The result was Doctor Who and the Pescatons, in which Pemberton reused many of the same ideas that had appeared in Fury from the Deep: creatures from the sea, a monster defeated by high-pitched sounds, and parasitic seaweed.
Eventually, I found myself taking a turn to the right. As I did so, something brushed against me. I couldn't see what it was. I could feel something entwining itself round my ankle, holding me in a vice-like grip. I couldn't move. And now my body. All the life was being squeezed out of me. My arm. Something was wrapping itself around my arm. I dropped the sea lamp. It floated away from me, but as the light filtered back through the darkness, I caught my first glimpse of the alien force that was slowly curling itself around my entire body. A living weed, clinging to me like the tentacles of a giant deep-sea octopus, crushing my bones and preparing to feed off me. It was the same metallic weed that Sarah Jane and I had found on the beach, and which was now glistening in the underwater light, its huge emerald eye penetrating the dark, its tentacles strangling me, tugging, dragging me down.
The transmission rights to screen Fury from the Deep were purchased by Australia in January 1969, who cleared the story for transmission only after they had made 6 cuts to the footage to remove what they deemed to be unsuitable material. It was these 6 physical edits to the film print that were subsequently discovered in 1996 by Damien Shanahan, an Australian fan who tracked the edited 16mm footage down to a repository of the Australian archives. The story was also received and transmitted in both Hong Kong and Singapore, although when the film print was received in New Zealand on the 1st of December 1970, it was rejected by the New Zealand Broadcasting Corporation and never transmitted. The grinding sound of the dematerializing TARDIS gradually disappeared, and in its place the seabirds returned, swooping low over the surface of the water, searching out the fish that they thought they would never see again. Out and beyond was the vast expanse of sea, the cruel, unyielding sea. Calm again now, the fury gone. All that remained were the small blobs of bubbling white foam and the straggling clumps of seaweed that rolled gently over the waves of the incoming tide.
We're not totally useless, surely?
Come on, we've got to move. Leave them to their stupid games.
What's the damage?
My arm, but God, I think
Broken?
feels like it.
Well, you're lucky. There's one down there who's staying on the mountain for good.
They'll come looking for him. We must move out of it. Unless you fancy trying to turn me over to your friends.
6 weeks ago they were my friends, but not anymore. Can you walk?
Aye. Just you try and keep up. Come on.
Oh, Clayton?
Yes, but how about David?
I'll go look for him.
Well, let's hope he's safe. With another man gone, Trent will skin me alive.
Well, if it gets too difficult, you can always set your warrior on him, Major.
But you've no valid proof of your qualifications.
Look, aren't we wasting time? If you want our help, why not tell us all about it?
All about it? All about what? Where have you been all these years?
Well, as a matter of fact, we've been in retreat in Tibet.